Well, hey couples, today I have Sally in the studio and we are going to talk about 3 lessons from the journey of divorce, which is not a fun topic to talk about, but the reality is a lot of you out there have gone through a divorce or may be going through one right now. So we're hopeful that this conversation and the insights from Sally's experience will be helpful to you. As with all of our resources on Pursue God, we would love for you to use the questions and really talk about this with someone that you trust, whether it's a mentor, a small group leader, a friend, someone at church, and really process through and learn through this so that you can be as healthy as you can be in the midst of a really difficult time. So having said that, Sally, I thought maybe we could just start with the first insight you learned from divorce about just what that meant for how you had to view your marriage.
Right. Divorce doesn't happen in my life. It didn't happen overnight. It was a process. The actual process of deciding that there was grounds for divorce or learning there was grounds for divorce was lengthy, like 7 years.
Wow.
And as a Christian, I didn't want to be in that place. I desperately wanted for my children, for my Christian walk, whatever that would mean to somebody else, perhaps, looking at us, looking at me. I wanted desperately to not be divorced. I came from a divorced family, and so that was another goal. I just didn't want to be another statistic.
Right.
And but what I learned in that 7 years, which I think is a long time.
That's a very long time.
Yeah, is, and I fought for it. I wanted to reconcile. That was my goal. That was my heart's desire. I learned a couple things. I learned that just like it takes 2 to get married and to fall in love and to tango, so to speak, 2 people lead to this place where a divorce happens. It doesn't just take one person, by and large. I mean, there can be persons that have more to contribute to the situation, but you're 2 people that became one, and so it does take 2. And so I thought, about my part a lot. I had a lot of introspection and reflection in that time frame, and in years since even. But definitely in that time frame, what was my part? And so I worked on me. I did a lot of working on me through counseling and through Christian mentoring and growing in my relationship with God. And I really worked hard, I thought. But I also learned that you can't do it alone.
Right.
And
that's got to be hard, especially for you to try that for 7 years, fighting for the relationship and then realizing that your spouse wasn't interested in saving or building a new relationship. And so at some point, you probably were just like, this is a fruitless endeavor.
Yeah, and there were some specific things for me that made it very conclusive. But yes, I came to that place to say, I can't do it alone. And I'm not going anywhere as a person. Right. This relationship is not progressing. And I'm sure other relationships around us were greatly being affected by this stagnation or this, So at some point, you just need to really evaluate that.
Okay. So your first insight then was just you realized you couldn't fight for the marriage alone.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you already alluded a little bit to the second insight, which I think is really important, because I think in divorce, it brings up a lot of emotion, right? You think you marry someone that loves you and cherishes you, and you say these vows, and you have this wonderful wedding day, and then down the road, you're like, how could this person hurt me so deeply as they have? But what would you say in your second thought about divorce, what you learned about yourself?
Yeah, a lot. I learned grace, about being gracious, first to myself and other people in my life. I learned to really experience God's grace. I think this relationship, when you're alone, after not being alone, you have some time to really spend with God, and you should. And it was a beautiful thing. And so we know he's gracious to us. We've seen his grace demonstrated, but you really live it when you're going through a situation like this. And so evaluating what was my part, maybe what my expectations I could have looked at differently, handled differently, my reaction to things, and then give those to God and be gracious and make mistakes, but own those mistakes. Look at them and realize that could have done some things differently. Whether that
would have changed anything or not,
who knows? Only God knows.
Right.
But I know it helps me in my other relationships, and certainly not just a man and a woman relationship, but all relationships, to be introspective. Relationships take two people.
Yeah, because I think that's true. Everyone has a perspective, and so even though your ex-husband, there's no excuse for choices that he made, he had a perspective too, and maybe things that weren't working for him in the marriage or things he felt unfulfilled. And so for you, the exercise of introspection then released you, I imagine, from being stuck in a place of bitterness and resentment.
Because it helped me to not, it's a fine line. You don't want to take the blame where the blame isn't yours.
Right.
But you also want to own what is yours.
Because nobody's perfect.
Right. We're not infallible. And even though you're striving for a perfect marriage, you think you're doing all the right things. There's some things that you brought, that I know I brought to that situation. Sure. And I wanted to evaluate, and I did. And
That's great.
I had the time. And again, I couldn't do it without God's grace.
Right.
I think we can't be honest and authentic with ourselves unless we know those mistakes, those sins are covered,
That's
and
good.
are forgiven, and so it's very freeing to surrender that.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the third thing, then, what did you learn about your relationship with God, or how did God show up in some neat ways through your divorce?
Yeah. Well, it's a mystery. So much of who He is and His grace and mercy are just a mystery and seem undeserving, but. He was there. He was just present. You have to be intentional in pursuing Him, but He will be there for you. He was for me. And how He's redeemed it is I can look back and I can just see that He was there. It was rough, but I can look back and that what you mentioned, that bitterness and that anger, I don't have that. I don't have it.
You were able to release all that?
I'm able to release that. And again, I don't think we humanly can do that on our own. So I've experienced that. I've gone into a new relationship that I wasn't even seeking. I really got into a place of contentment in my singlehood, and perhaps that made me more attractive or whatever, but I wasn't even looking for doing this again. I was okay with it. I was okay being on my own because I knew I had God had taken care of me. He had provided. There was financial concerns at times, and God just got me through those in ways that, again, I suppose in the moment I was maybe more anxious than looking back, but He provided. He always provided. I think one of the most beautiful ways that God's redeemed something that is not what He wants, it's not His best for anyone involved, is that He's definitely made me a better wife. I think He's made me a better person overall. I can see lots of things in me, but He's made me a better wife.
Good. Okay, well, ladies, I hope this was helpful to you, this conversation that we had today. Like I said, use the questions and talk with someone about this as you struggle through what your own experience is with divorce. And we'll see you in the next video.